The weak human enters the alien gym. The sky was dark purple, with two suns setting behind the mountains of planet Gorath 7. It was a peaceful evening, until a loud sound broke the silence. Boom! A small spaceship crashed into the ground just outside the alien city. Smoke rose into the air, and local aliens rushed to see what happened. From the broken ship, a single figure stepped out. It was not an alien. It was a human. His name was Ray Carter. He looked weak, tired, and badly injured. His clothes were torn, his arms were shaking, and blood ran down his forehead. He could barely walk. "Is that a human?" one alien asked. "What's he doing here?" "This isn't Earth," another laughed. Ray looked up at the huge city in front of him. He took a deep breath and kept walking, one step at a time. In the center of the city stood a massive building, the Titan Core Training Arena. This was not an ordinary gym. It was the most famous training center in the galaxy. Only the strongest aliens were allowed inside. Warriors from over 70 different planets trained there to become elite soldiers. Ray walked to the entrance, breathing heavily. The alien guards looked at him, confused. "You're in the wrong place, human," one guard said. Ray didn't answer. He just pointed to the sign, "All species welcome to train." The guard laughed. "You won't last 5 minutes, but go ahead." The giant metal doors opened. The inside of the gym was huge. The sound of heavy machines, battle cries, and weights slamming echoed all around. Aliens of all shapes and sizes trained here. Some had 6 arms, others had glowing skin. One lifted a boulder with 2 fingers. Another flew through the air using energy wings. And then Ray entered. The room went quiet. Every alien turned to look at him. Someone laughed, then another. Soon, the entire gym was filled with laughter. "Is this a joke? Look at his arms. They're like noodles. He can't even lift a training bar." Ray said nothing. He walked to an empty mat and sat down. He pulled out a small bottle of water and drank slowly. His hands shook, his legs hurt, but his eyes were full of fire. From the upper level, a giant alien watched silently. He was 4 meters tall, with 4 thick arms and red skin that glowed slightly. His name was Vorgax, the master trainer of Titan Core. He turned to his assistant and said, "Who allowed that human in?" "The rulebook says anyone can train, sir," the assistant replied. "Hemph," Vorgax grunted. "He'll be gone by tomorrow." Ray started his first training session. He walked to the basic lifting zone. The smallest weight was 50 kilograms, already heavier than anything he'd lifted before. He placed his hands on the bar. His arms trembled. He lifted slowly and failed. The weight dropped with a loud thud. Aliens nearby laughed even harder. Ray tried again, and again, and again. His face turned red. His arms shook, and sweat poured down his face. But he didn't stop. He didn't care about the laughs. He didn't care about the pain. He kept trying. Hours passed. By the end of the day, Ray collapsed on the floor. His body was finished. His muscles screamed, but his mind was still awake. As the lights in the gym turned off, an alien janitor walked by. "You're crazy, human," the janitor said. "Why are you doing this?" Ray looked up, barely able to speak. "Because I have nowhere else to go." That night, Ray slept in the corner of the gym, on a cold floor, using his jacket as a pillow. Outside, the stars shined bright. Inside, everyone thought the human would leave by morning. But they were wrong. Pain, sweat, and human grit. The gym was silent before sunrise. Darkness still covered the massive halls of Titan Core, and most aliens were asleep in their quarters. The machines were cold, the training floors empty. But one small figure was already moving. It was Ray Carter, the weak human who had walked into the most brutal alien gym in the galaxy and had been laughed at on day 1. He wasn't laughing now. His body ached like fire. Every part of him screamed in pain. His arms barely moved, and his legs felt like stone. But Ray stood up anyway. He wrapped a cloth around his bruised hands and walked back to the weight zone. No one was watching him now. The mockery, the alien jokes, the laughter, all gone in this quiet hour. He took a deep breath. Just one more try. Day 2 at Titan Core. Ray faced the same 50 kilograms bar again. He had failed yesterday, over and over. The bar had beaten him. His muscles had given up. But today, he was different. He crouched, locked his arms, and lifted. His back shook, his face twisted in pain. But this time, the bar moved. An inch, 2, 5. Then, it lifted off the ground. Only for a second. But it was enough. He dropped it and fell to his knees, gasping. But a tiny smile appeared on his face. By morning, the gym filled with noise again. Powerful aliens walked in with loud footsteps and big egos. Some were warriors from war planets. Others were champions of cosmic fighting arenas. They all had one thing in common. They looked stronger, faster, and smarter than the human. They noticed Ray on the ground, breathing heavily beside the bar. He's still here. What's he trying to prove? Someone should tell him humans don't belong here. Ray heard it all, but he didn't stop. He grabbed a mop, cleaned his sweat, and walked to the next zone. That afternoon, a young alien girl named Xena was training nearby. She was from the planet Varelia, tall and blue-skinned, with eyes that glowed like stars. She had trained at Titan Core for 3 years already. She had seen many recruits come and go. But something about this human caught her attention. She watched him fail over and over again. He couldn't jump as high. He couldn't run as fast. He couldn't punch as hard. But he never gave up. Where others would quit after one bad session, Ray came back for another. Xena walked over during his break. "You know," she said, handing him a cold water bottle, "your species isn't built for this kind of training." Ray took it, nodding. "I know. Then why keep going?" Ray looked at her, his voice calm but full of emotion. Because giving up never helped anyone. Over the next days, the pain increased. Ray's palms were torn open. His legs cramped every night. He vomited twice after an endurance test. He blacked out during a gravity pull session. But each time, he got up again. Aliens began whispering about him. Still alive. Does he enjoy pain? He's not strong, but he's something else. 1 week later, Ray tried the 50 kilograms bar again. This time, he lifted it above his head. The room fell silent. Even Vorgax, the master trainer watching from above, raised an eyebrow. "Interesting," he muttered. "He's still weak, but something's changing." Later that week, the gym introduced the Iron Path. It was a training course designed to break new recruits. 500 meters of fire tunnels, magnetic walls, and shock zones. Failure rate, 90%. Only the strong dared to enter. Ray stepped in. Everyone gasped. He's going to die in there. Someone stop him. Xena stood quietly near the control panel, watching closely. The challenge began. Ray crawled through the heated vents, flames licking his arms. He screamed but pushed forward. He climbed the magnetic wall, hands slipping, his body pulled by artificial gravity. He fell once, twice, but climbed again. He crossed the electric zone, getting shocked again and again. Each time, he screamed in pain, but took another step. By the time he reached the end, his uniform was burned, and his face was covered in dirt and blood. But he was still standing. Only 2 recruits finished the course that day. One was a 4-eyed alien from planet Krovek. The other was a human named Ray Carter. Vorgax called a meeting with his top trainers. "This human is not the strongest," he said. "Not the fastest, not the smartest." "Then why notice him?" one trainer asked. Because, Vorgak said slowly, he does not break. Back in the training hall, Ray lay on the ground, staring at the ceiling. His body was broken again, but his heart was strong. Xena sat next to him. You survived the Iron Path, she said. Even I didn't finish it my first try. Ray turned his head slightly, whispering, I'm not here to impress anyone. I'm just trying to become better. Xena smiled. You already are. In one corner of the gym, a group of alien recruits who had laughed at Ray on day one now watched him silently. One of them asked, Do you think he'll make it to the next test? Another replied, At this point, I wouldn't bet against him. The first challenge, Alien Combat Ring. The loud sound of the battle siren echoed through the Titan Core arena. It was time for the first combat challenge. Every recruit in the gym had to face an opponent in a live fight, one-on-one. No weapons, no gear, just skill, strength, and survival instincts. The goal was simple: don't get knocked out. For most alien warriors, this was exciting. For some, it was easy. But for Ray Carter, the only human in Titan Core, this was a nightmare. He had never been in a real fight before, not like this. Not in front of 100 warriors, not against something twice his size with claws, fangs, or laser eyes. Still, Ray stood in line with the rest of the recruits. His body was sore. His arms were bruised, but his eyes were focused. From the upper platform, Vorgak stepped forward. His voice boomed across the gym. Welcome to the combat ring. This is not a test. This is survival. You want to be one of us. Show us what you've got. The crowd of aliens cheered. Some chanted names of their favorite fighters. Others laughed when they saw Ray's small frame. A large screen lit up. It began showing the combat pairings. Ray's name blinked. Ray Carter, human, viz. GROHTAL, ZCHN beast. A loud, monstrous roar echoed from the other side of the arena. Ray looked up. A huge alien, over 8 feet tall, stepped forward. Its skin was covered in thick armor-like scales. It had glowing red eyes and sharp teeth the size of fingers. Grotal. He cracked his knuckles and smiled with 4 lips. You? I'm going to crush you in 10 seconds. Ray didn't reply. He walked slowly to the center of the ring. His legs felt heavy, not from fear, but from pressure. He had one shot to prove he wasn't a joke. The bell rang. Grotal charged like a bull. The ground shook under his feet. Ray dodged left, barely. A second too slow, and his head would have been taken off. The alien laughed. Run, little human. Run. Ray stayed low, circling. He remembered Xena's advice the night before. Don't fight like them. Fight like you. You're human. Use your mind. Use your speed. Grotal attacked again, this time with a spinning arm swing. Ray ducked and rolled, landing behind him. He kicked the back of the alien's leg, not to hurt him, but to unbalance him. It worked. Grotal stumbled. The crowd murmured. Ray kept moving. He didn't have the strength to knock out his opponent, but he had something else. Grit. Grotal roared and grabbed a piece of broken stone from the floor. He threw it like a missile. Ray jumped aside, scraping his shoulder as the rock shattered behind him. Blood dripped from his arm, but he didn't stop. He had trained in pain. He had lived in it. 5 minutes passed. Grotal was breathing harder now. His big body was fast, but it used energy quickly. Ray's plan was working. He jumped on a nearby pillar, bounced off it, and kicked Grotal right in the jaw. The alien stumbled back. The crowd went silent for a second. Ray landed on his feet, barely holding his balance. Grotal touched his jaw. Blood. His smile faded. Now he was angry. The alien charged again, this time even faster. Ray wasn't quick enough. Samash. A huge fist slammed into his side. Ray flew across the ring, hitting the wall hard. He fell to the ground. Xena stood up in the audience, her heart racing. "Get up, Ray." The crowd thought it was over. Vorgax narrowed his eyes. But then, Ray moved. He coughed, stood up slowly, and raised his fists again. Half the crowd gasped. The other half cheered. Even Grotal looked surprised. "You should have stayed down." Ray smiled through the blood. "I don't know how." The fight continued. Ray ducked, rolled, struck, and dodged. Every hit he took, he came back smarter. He studied Grotal's patterns, his footwork, the way he moved before punching. He wasn't the strongest, but he was becoming the most dangerous because he refused to break. 10 minutes in, Grotal was exhausted. Ray was bruised and bloody, but still standing. The crowd began chanting, "Human, human, human." Ray didn't expect to win, but his goal was different. He just had to last. The bell rang. Time. The match was over. No knockout. No winner. A draw. The arena was quiet for a moment. Then, it exploded with noise. Aliens who once mocked Ray were now cheering. Others looked at him with respect. Grotal walked over. He stared at Ray, chest rising and falling. Then he raised Ray's arm. "He's not weak," Grotal growled. "He's one of us." In the observation tower, Vorgax smiled slightly. He turned to his assistant. "Send him to Phase 2. The assistant hesitated. "But sir, he didn't win." "He did something harder," Vorgax said. "He endured." That night, Ray sat outside the arena under the stars. His ribs hurt, his face was swollen, but his heart was full. Xena walked over and handed him a hot drink. "You survived, Grotal. That's a victory in my book." Ray sipped it slowly. "I didn't win." Xena sat beside him. "You didn't have to. You changed the story. No one will laugh at humans again." Ray looked up at the stars. "Not bad for a weak species, huh?" Xena smiled. "You're not weak. You're human. That's your power." Training with Vorgax, breaking the human limit. The next morning, Ray stood alone in the center of the gym. There was no cheering crowd, no music, no noise, only silence. And Vorgax, the master trainer, stepped forward from the shadows. His 4 arms crossed, his red skin glowing under the arena lights. "You survived the combat ring," Vorgax said, voice low but powerful. "But survival is not strength." Ray didn't move. He was still sore from the fight with Grotal. His ribs ached with every breath. Vorgax continued, "From now on, you train with me. No comfort, no breaks, only pain. This is where recruits are broken or born." Ray nodded. "I'm ready." Vorgax's eyes narrowed. "We'll see." Phase 2 had begun. Ray's training with Vorgax was like nothing he had faced before. Each session was worse than the last. Every hour was a test of mind, muscle, and spirit. Day 1. Gravity Gauntlet. Vorgax led Ray into a sealed chamber where the gravity was 10 times stronger than Earth. Even walking was a challenge. Ray collapsed after 10 steps. Vorgax didn't help. He only watched and said, "Crawl." Ray's arms shook as he dragged himself across the floor. His lungs screamed for air. His body trembled with every movement. He finished the course after 6 hours, his body shaking, drenched in sweat. Day 3. Zero oxygen training. Ray was thrown into a chamber with limited air. He had to complete a puzzle while oxygen slowly ran out. Vorgax watched from a monitor. Most aliens panicked in the first 5 minutes. Ray lasted 13. He solved the puzzle with trembling hands and passed out just as the door opened. Vorgax lifted him with one hand and whispered, "Not bad, human." Day 5. Psychological warfare. Ray entered a black room. Alone. Cold. Silent. The room played sounds from Earth, sirens, screaming, memories of war, his old life. Voices from his past, doubts and fears echoed inside his mind. Failure. You'll never be enough. Why are you even here? Ray sat still, eyes closed, heart pounding. But he didn't give in. He whispered to himself, I'm not that person anymore. When he exited the room 4 hours later, his mind was quiet and clear. Day 7. Vorgax's challenge. Vorgax brought Ray to a private arena. Inside was a moving wall made of energy blocks. It shifted, closed, and expanded without warning. The goal was to run through it, memorize its pattern, and reach the other side. No one had ever done it. Ray stood at the start. Vorgax gave him one instruction. If you fall, the wall resets. If you give up, you're out. The path is not straight. Neither is life. Ray took off running. The wall slammed. He ducked. Another block flew from the side. He rolled. The energy shocked his leg. He limped. He failed. Again and again. But each time, he remembered something new. A rhythm. A pattern. By sunset, with legs bruised and face cut, he reached the other side. Vorgax's face didn't change, but his tone did. You think like a human. You fight like one. That is your gift. That night, Ray sat alone outside the gym. The stars above were still, quiet. Xena joined him, handing him a protein pack. You look half dead, she said. Ray chuckled. Only half. You made it through Vorgax's wall. Even I failed that one. Ray chewed slowly. Why is he doing this? Why train me so hard? Xena paused. Because he respects you. And that scares him. Ray raised an eyebrow. You're showing aliens something new, she continued. You're proving that strength isn't just power. It's pain. It's patience. It's refusing to stay down. Week 2 of training. Ray began to transform. His muscles grew leaner. His movements faster. His balance sharper. His pain tolerance off the charts. But more than that, his thinking changed. He began understanding alien combat logic, how they moved, how they reacted, how they used energy. He combined it with his own instincts, his earth-born survival skills, his raw creativity. And soon, Ray wasn't just surviving Titan Core. He was growing into something more. One afternoon, during training, a giant 6-armed alien lost control of a heavy machine. The equipment flew across the room toward a group of recruits. Ray was the only one fast enough to act. He jumped in front, grabbed the side of the machine, and redirected it with his body weight, rolling it safely away. The machine crashed into the wall, but no one was hurt. Ray's arm was fractured, but he didn't care. The recruits he saved looked at him in awe. You're crazy, one said. You're brave, another whispered. Ray just smiled. Just human. The next day, the alien he saved, Kirok, a warrior from planet Vrax, approached him. I used to laugh at you, Kirok said, placing his massive hand on Ray's shoulder. But now, I follow you. Word spread. Ray, the weak human, had earned more than respect. He had earned loyalty. Later that evening, Vorgax stood in front of Ray once more. You have passed every test, but one remains. Ray stood tall. What is it? Vorgax pointed to a glowing map of the galaxy. A simulation, real battlefield, real stakes, a rescue mission inside a war zone. Ray's eyes focused. You will lead a team. If they fail, it's your failure. If they die, it's on you. Ray nodded without fear. I'm ready. Vorgax gave the smallest nod. For the first time, he said, you are not just a human in our gym. You are one of our own. Mission simulation. Raves the impossible odds. A red alarm echoed through Titan Core's main hall. Mission simulation protocol. Active. The massive screen in the center of the gym flickered to life, showing a digital battlefield. A burning alien jungle under attack, with firestorms, falling debris, and strange enemy creatures lurking in the smoke. The recruits gathered around in silence. Everyone knew this challenge. It was the final test before elite selection. The simulation was not a game. It was built from real war data. The pain was real. The fear was real. And the failure felt like death. Out of 500 recruits, only 4 teams would be chosen. Ray Carter, the human, was now expected to lead one of them. Team Echo 9, the screen displayed. Ray looked up as 5 names appeared beneath his. Ray Carter, human, team leader. Xena, Varelian scout. Kirok, Vrax brawler. Nelly, insectoid medic. Jarn, silent class sniper. Whispers broke out among the recruits. They gave the human a squad. He's gonna get them all killed. This is insane. But Vorgak stood behind the selection. He simply said, let's see what the human does when everything burns. Inside the simulation chamber, the team stood in an open dropship, flying over the simulation zone. Flames below lit up the sky. Explosions echoed in the distance. The jungle was alive with danger. Ray looked at his team. Each of them was stronger, faster, or smarter than him. But they looked to him now. He was their leader. Mission goal? Xena asked. Ray spoke calmly. A research team is trapped in the jungle. We find them. We bring them back alive. No matter what. Kirok grunted. Simple plan. I like it. But Ray's eyes were serious. Nothing in this place is simple. Stick together. Watch each other's backs. We get out as one, or not at all. The dropship doors opened. The team jumped into chaos. Flames licked the trees. Thick smoke filled the air. The ground was shaking under their boots. Ray pulled up the scanner. Life signs -2 kilometers northeast. Let's move. First challenge, the sinkhole swamp. Half the forest was sunken into black mud. Any step could be a trap. Jarn nearly sank, but Ray tied a cable to a nearby branch and pulled him out just in time. Then something hissed. From the swamp, a long shadow rose. A razor lizard, 6 meters long, with skin like glass and speed like lightning. Nelly screamed. Kirok charged. Xena fired her plasma bow. Ray yelled, fall back to the stones. He remembered a pattern in the swamp terrain from training, a rock path hidden in the layout. He led them through, one by one, while dodging the creature's slashes. Ray grabbed a plasma spike and hurled it directly at the lizard's eye. Boom! The creature shrieked and collapsed. Humans got bite. Kirok grinned. Second challenge, collapse zone. As they reached the life sign coordinates, the ground exploded beneath them. Metal ruins fell from above, old crashed ships buried in the jungle. Xena was pinned under a chunk of armor plating. Ray rushed in. Fire rained around him. Get her out, he shouted. Kirok lifted the plate with a roar, but fire burst from a nearby pipe. Ray jumped in, used his jacket to block the flames, burning his arms. Xena gasped as he pulled her out. You're insane, she coughed. Ray smiled through the pain. Only on the outside. Final challenge, the hive ambush. They found the trapped research team inside a half-destroyed pod. But the moment they reached them, the ground trembled. Hundreds of glowing red eyes appeared in the trees. Hive crawlers, nightmarish creatures with speed, venom, and numbers. Jarn fired first. Nelly covered the wounded. Kirok smashed through the first wave. Ray looked around. There was no clear path out. Then he saw it, an old bridge over a lava trench, unstable but still standing. Retreat to the bridge, he shouted. Xena covered the rear. Ray carried a wounded researcher over his shoulders. They ran. Halfway across the bridge, it began to collapse. Jump, Ray yelled. The team leaped as the bridge fell behind them. But one crawler jumped too, heading straight for Ray. He had no time. He let go of the wounded man, pushed him forward, and took the hit himself. Crash. Both fell down, toward the lava trench. The simulation froze. The screen blinked. Simulation complete. 4 survivors extracted. 1 MIA. Ray Carter, presumed dead. The room fell silent. Xena stared at the screen. So did Kirak, and even Vorgax. Then, the screen blinked again. Override. Heartbeat detected. Subject alive. A thermal drone on the edge of the trench showed Ray hanging from a broken metal beam, covered in burns, but alive. He looked up at the sky, panting, and muttered one word. Figured. After the simulation, Ray was helped out of the chamber, limping and exhausted. Vorgax waited at the exit. You broke every bone rule, the master trainer said. Took every risk. You should have died. Ray replied, but we got them all out. Vorgax stared at him, then gave a rare nod. You're not just strong human. You lead like one of us. Xena walked up beside Ray. No, she said. He leads better than most of us. Word of the mission spread across Titan Core. The story of a fragile human carrying a wounded alien across fire, facing a crawler barehanded, outsmarting impossible odds. Recruits who once laughed now listened. Veterans who once ignored now observed. Ray Carter was no longer the weak human. He was the strongest recruit, not by muscle, but by heart. The Galactic Tournament. Human enters the arena. The name Ray Carter lit up across the Titan Core Hall screen in bold, glowing letters. Underneath it, 2 more words appeared. Tournament HFY. The room fell quiet. Not long ago, Ray was just a weak, broken human, laughed at by every alien in the gym. Now, he was about to compete in the Galactic Warrior Tournament, an elite competition held only once every 10 years. The strongest fighters from across the galaxy came to prove their worth. Losing meant humiliation. Winning meant legend. No human had ever entered. Until now. In the locker room, Ray tightened the straps on his combat gear. It wasn't fancy, just flexible armor with a human touch. Lightweight. Durable. Built for movement, not brute strength. Xena stepped in, her sharp eyes glowing. You sure about this? She asked. These aren't rookies. Some of them have trained in battle since birth. Others are walking weapons. Ray gave a small smile. Good. Then he'll be ready for me. Xena shook her head, half worried, half impressed. You're different now. Ray paused. No, I've always been this way. I just had to survive long enough for everyone else to see it. The arena of Galaxis Prime. A massive stadium floating in space, surrounded by ships, satellites, and streaming channels from 1,000 planets. Inside the arena, the crowd roared. Over 2 million aliens watched from the stands, with billions more watching across the galaxy. A booming voice echoed from the sky. Well, see you into the 78th Galactic Warrior Tournament. To fight GT is honor. To endure is power. To win is history. Combatants were introduced one by one. Champions from desert worlds, ice moons, floating cities, and machine planets. Then the final name appeared on the screen. Ray Carter, human, Titancore trained. The crowd went silent for a moment. Then came the laughter. A human. Again. They sent a mascot. Poor thing won't last a minute. Ray walked into the arena, eyes straight ahead, blocking out every word. He wasn't here for applause. He was here to earn something better, respect. First match, Ray vs. Grandeur of Rocktoll. Grandeur was massive, over 9 feet tall, covered in bone armor, carrying an energy spear the size of a car. The moment the match started, Grandeur roared and charged. Ray didn't run. He sidestepped, dodging the spear, and slid between Grandeur's legs. The crowd gasped. Ray struck at the joints in Grandeur's armor, small, weak spots most fighters ignored. Grandeur stumbled. Ray dodged another strike, leaped on Grandeur's back, and locked a pressure hold. With a roar, Gronder fell to his knees and tapped out. Ray won. The crowd didn't cheer, yet. They were too stunned. Second match. Ray vs. Zrak the Shadowborn. Zrak was fast, silent, deadly. She moved like smoke and struck like lightning. For 5 minutes, Ray couldn't land a hit. But then he noticed her rhythm. 1-2 strike. Vanish. 1-2. Pause. She was fast, but predictable. Ray used a distraction, a timed explosive charge, and baited her into a trap. She reappeared, and he was ready. A flip, a lock, a knockout. Another win. Now the crowd started noticing. The laughter turned to whispers. He's not strong. He's smart. He fights like a tactician. Third match. Rave's Titan-class drone. A machine built for destruction. No emotion. No fatigue. No mercy. It launched missiles, lasers, and sonic blasts. Ray couldn't overpower it. So, he outlasted it. He used his environment, made the drone destroy its own supports, and finally overloaded its power core with a trick he'd learned in Vorgax's gravity drill. The drone exploded. Ray stood tall. Now the crowd cheered. They stood. They chanted, "Human, human, human." But not everyone was impressed. From the dark booth above the arena, a tall figure watched Ray's matches in silence. It was Vorgax, arms crossed, face calm. 3 matches, 3 wins, said his assistant. Vorgax said nothing for a while. Then finally, "He's strong, but he hasn't faced himself yet." Final match announcement. The crowd hushed. The screen flashed. Final MTG. Ray Carter vs. Vigo or JX. The stadium exploded in shock. Vorgax, the trainer himself. He's never entered the tournament. He's a legend. This human's finished. Ray stood in the center of the arena, staring at the screen. He didn't flinch. He didn't smile. He just whispered, "So it ends like this." That night, Ray sat in silence in his resting chamber. Xena visited one last time. "You don't have to do this," she said. "You've already proved everything." Ray looked at her. "Not everything." Xena narrowed her eyes. "What else is there?" Ray whispered, "I have to prove it to myself." The final day. 2 fighters entered the arena. One was a 4-armed, red-skinned warrior of legend, Vorgax, the master of Titan core. The other was a human from Earth, born weak, built by pain, forged in fire, Ray Carter. The bell rang. The final battle began. Vorgax attacked first, faster than Ray expected. He was a blur of movement, 4 fists, 2 kicks, spinning with years of perfected battle. Ray was hit hard, thrown across the arena. But he stood up. He fought back, not with force, but with skill. He ducked, used momentum, redirected hits, hit pressure points, and escaped blocks. He mixed everything he'd learned: alien techniques, human strategy, pain tolerance, and heart. The fight became brutal, exhausting, personal. Final moments. Vorgax lifted Ray into the air and threw him to the ground. Ray didn't move. The crowd gasped. Then, Ray's hand twitched. He rolled, pulled himself up using the ropes, and smiled. "You'll have to try harder." Vorgax stared, then laughed. "You are no longer weak." Ray moved in fast, surprising everyone. A perfect combination of strikes. A flip. A lock. Boom. Vorgax hit the ground. Ray stood over him. The arena was silent. Then, explosion of cheers. Ray Carter had won. After the match, Vorgax stood beside Ray and raised his hand. "This human," he said to the galaxy, "is no longer a student. He is a warrior." Ray, breathing hard, looked around the stadium, at billions of eyes watching him. And for the first time since he crashed on Gorath 7, he allowed himself to feel it. He belonged, not because he was the strongest, but because he never gave up. Ray vs. Vorgax. The legend is born. Smoke drifted across the floor of the arena. The energy shields flickered. The crowd was frozen, silent, waiting. Then, a voice echoed across the stadium. The HFY round will be repeated. The lights cut through the smoke to reveal Vorgax, the red-skinned, four-armed war titan rising to his feet. He hadn't lost. He hadn't surrendered. He had paused to test. Ray Carter, the human who had climbed from weakness to warrior, stood across from him, bloodied, breathing hard, but unshaken. Vorgax's deep voice thundered through the arena. The last match was not real. It was a test. This is the real fight. The audience gasped. Xena stood up from the sidelines. No, that wasn't the final match. Ray looked up at Vorgax. You planned this? He asked. Vorgax's red eyes narrowed. I trained you to face the impossible. Now, be ready to become the impossible. The shields rose again, this time brighter, hotter, stronger. Final battle. Ray Carter vs. Vorgax. No rules, no limits. One winner. 100 billion beings across the galaxy tuned in. This was no longer about proving strength. It was about proving what it means to be human. The bell rang. Vorgax launched forward, faster than before. His four arms moved in a blur of destruction. Ray ducked, slid under, rolled left, jumped back. The ground cracked where he stood a moment earlier. Boom. The force alone could have crushed metal, but Ray had been trained in that very pressure. He used his smaller size to move faster, smarter. He struck back, aiming at joints, pressure points, and balance lines. Vorgax grinned. You've learned well. Ray smiled back. I had a good teacher. Vorgax twisted, grabbed Ray midair with two arms, and slammed him into the ground. Crash. Dust flew everywhere. The crowd gasped. Xena stepped forward. Get up. Come on. Ray. Ray coughed. Blood in his mouth. Ribs broken. Vision blurry. But his mind was clear. He grabbed a handful of dirt and stood up again. Second wave. Vorgax unleashed a flurry of rapid hits. Ray blocked some, dodged others, and absorbed the rest. But this time, he didn't fall. Instead, he moved forward, step by step, like he did on day one when his body was broken, but his will was not. Your strength is fading, Vorgax growled. Ray smirked through bruised lips. Good. That means I've started using it. With a sudden twist, Ray delivered a spinning strike to Vorgax's temple, his signature hybrid move. Human precision plus alien power plus Titan core flow. Vorgax stumbled. The crowd exploded. Flashback montage flickered on the screens around the stadium. Ray lifting that 50 kilograms bar, shaking but refusing to quit. Ray crawling through the fire tunnels, bloody but determined. Ray saving his squad in the simulation. Ray surviving the hive. Ray standing tall in the tournament. And now, Ray fighting the unbreakable Vorgax and holding his own. Final minutes. Both fighters were exhausted, bruised, breathing hard. Ray's leg was injured. Vorgax's left shoulder was shattered. They circled each other, silent. You still think you're human? Vorgax asked. Ray nodded. I know I am. Then why aren't you broken? Ray looked him in the eye. Because being human doesn't mean being weak. It means getting up after you've been broken. Final strike. Vorgax charged, his last burst of fury, all arms swinging in a final hammer blow. Ray stepped into it, not away. He took the hit to the side. It threw him. But midair, he twisted, used the force, launched himself back, and delivered a full-powered cross-body strike directly to Vorgax's center chest node. Boom. Vorgax's arms froze. His knees buckled. He fell. The stadium was dead quiet. Even the wind seemed to pause. Then, Vorgax laughed, a deep, heavy, proud laugh. He looked up at Ray from the ground. "You are not my student anymore. You are my equal." He raised Ray's hand. The crowd rose. Every alien in the arena stood. The chant began. Human, human, human. Later, in the Titan Core Hall of Champions, Ray stood before a massive holographic wall. His name was now written in glowing letters. Ray Carter. First, human champion. Titancore legend. Xena stood beside him. "You did it," she said softly. Ray looked at the wall. "No, we did it. Every alien who mocked me. Every teammate who stood with me. Every trial. Every bruise." He touched the wall. "Each one made me stronger." Vorgax entered the hall. "You've changed Titan Core forever," he said. Ray turned. "I didn't want to change anything. I just wanted to belong." Vorgax smiled. "Now you do." He handed Ray a crystal medallion. Honor of the Core, given only to warriors who redefine what power means. Ray looked down at the medal, then back at the master who once called him weak. He saluted, the human way. That night, Ray stood alone at the edge of the training arena. The stars above were endless. Once, he was just a broken human crash-landed on an alien world. Now, he was a symbol, a message, to the galaxy. That strength isn't just about power. It's about never quitting. It's about pain, grit, and rising again. Somewhere in the galaxy, a young alien child watched Ray's final fight on a screen. His mother whispered, he was just a human. The child looked up with wide eyes. "I want to be like him." Ray Carter had entered as a joke. He left as a legend. Not just the strongest recruit, but the symbol of what humanity could become.